And well, there's one song that kind of stuck out for me both sonically and lyrically, which is the final track, Tenderness. So I wonder, what was the spark for that track?
I think it's important to leave a record like this on an optimistic note, and it's an optimistic song, has a little faith in humanity.
And yeah, I was going to ask why is this important, but it's quite evident why a little bit of hope is good. But you mentioned earlier that the lyrics in a way drive the music. So how does that work in a sense? When you have certain, for instance, with a song like Violence or the opening track, do you have a more angry? Are you looking for a more angry sound or a more?
Well, Violence isn't. You wouldn't call Violence like a melodic sort of song, It's got one melody like the na 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 na, but really it's words, it's thoughts and ideas, and the music, the rhythm section is just kind of supporting the thoughts and the ideas. It's kind of like a like Fela Kuti or like James Brown, the band is vamping behind, and then there's just there's this kind of an outpouring of emotion going on, and so in a way the music, the song itself, is kind of a bit of a supporting actor to the words and ideas.
And how much of, and this is not just about that track, but how much of kind of the sound of the album was realized before you went to Danger Mouse, Brian Burton?
It's almost like pretty written by the time Brian came in. We had been demoing a lot and writing songs together a lot. I mean, it's hard to define what is written. Like, all the song ideas were there. So much, gets rewritten in the context of the studio because you're trying to make everything perfect. But, I mean, we had been demoing a lot before.
Like a year.
Yeah.
Because, you have been known for your DIY mentality, that kind of underground scene where you came from. So going for somebody like Brian, what was involved in that decision-making process?
He had contacted us. I guess he was a fan of the group, which is cool, and he had found out we were making a record and hit us up. And I think that, like we were saying, every record that we make, we want to be a new experience and kind of have new challenges and try new things that we hadn't done before. And working with a producer on a Parquet Courts record was something that we'd never done before. And thinking about the kinds of artists that Brian's worked with, and his whole discography is quite diverse, and he draws from a lot of different influences, which I think Parquet Courts does as well. And so all of that got us really interested in what that might be like. And yeah, we tried it out for a few days in New York, and it felt really natural, and we were able to work really fluidly together and decided that it could be a cool thing to do the record.
And you mentioned freedom earlier on about this process, that it was quite that you have a quite free process of working. So having Brian there, was that liberating in a sense?
It was, in some ways, it was liberating because we had someone that we all trusted and respected to kind of keep the bigger picture in mind of what the record would inevitably be, based on all the songs that we had written already. And so I feel like creatively we were more free to kind of focus on details and perfecting our material as we went along, and having another person there that we trusted kind of guiding us through the process was, oddly liberating.
Is there one example you can give me that where kind of working with Brian kind of made a song, or where it would be quite different if he hadn't been there?
Sure. Well, before we really kind of dove into recording the record, we did a few days with Brian at Electric Ladyland, where he, there was a fear about working with the producer, and I guess the fear being like, you know, are we going to be able to be ourselves? And what does a producer do, really? Because we didn't exactly know, and it's a term that I think kind of everybody applies their work to differently. And you know, Brian basically did a great job of just letting us do our thing and letting us do a record, you know, the way we normally would have, but using, you know, his honesty, direct, objective opinion, expertise of someone who, you know, that type of opinion that can only come from outside a band, from someone who can just honestly say to you, like, you know, you do that a lot. You have a habit of doing that a lot. Do you know that you're doing that? And why don't you try this? So like when we first started working with him the first day, he basically was just like, you know, go write a song. And that kind of became Violence. I had that bass line for Violence. And, you know, he's like, it's a killer bass line, write another one. And so, you know, just on the spot, me and Sean started working on other bass lines, and, you know, he was like, maybe there's another part to this song. So out of that session, we got Violence, and we got the beginnings of the song Normalization. So I don't know if that could have happened, you know, if we were just doing things the way that we normally had, because, you know, we had someone outside of the band who was just like, write a new song, you know?
And I suppose you've listened to the album by now a bunch of times. So when you listen to it, do you hear it, the sonic differences between earlier albums? In terms of production, in terms of kind of how the album comes at you?
Well, I mean, you know, the studios that we recorded this record in are, you know, much, you know, more sophisticated than the environment we recorded, say, Light Up Gold or even Sunbathing Animals. So obviously, yeah, that can be heard. You know, the level of production has kind of gone up.
Mm. But not in terms of kind of the warmth of the feel that you get from it.
I think that, yeah, it does. I think the record sounds great, and I think a lot of that has to do with the mixing engineer, Claudius Mittendorfer, who we had never worked with before, and he, is an incredible engineer. I think the way that the record sounds, he was able to place all the instruments in really their own places in the mix, and there's a real clarity to the record that I think that hasn't existed previously. And maybe that just, I think maybe the way that we were recording, maybe the different sounds we were using, the kinds of songs we were writing, we're just trying out different things. I don't know, it's hard to say. I mean, I agree with you that it does sound, the sound of the record, I think, sounds incredible, and the fidelity of it is greater than any of our other records. And I think there's a lot of different factors that went into it. I think starting our pre-production process with recording our demos like a year and a half before we went into the studio helps a lot, because when we got into the studio to record like the album versions, we had already kind of been through the process once and knew sort of the different sounds that we wanted to achieve. Right. This record in particular, one thing we did differently was, working for a while in pre-production, which we'd never done before, and that helped us kind of start to conceptualize the sound of the record before, a while before we started the official recording of it, to be able to hear all the songs recorded in a demoed kind of way allows you to sort of expand your way of thinking about the album, a long time ahead of time. Whereas before, the songs might just exist in our head, and then we would have a couple weeks in the studio, and then that's the record that would come out of it. So, I think we're really conscious of yeah, doing things in a different way this time, and that was one way. And I think that the fidelity of the record, the outcome of that is greater, maybe because of that and a few other things.
Final question then. The album's titled Wide Awake. It's off a song on the record. Mm-hmm. When did this title pop up as potentially one to title the album?
I don't know. It was towards the end, I guess. Yeah. We didn't know what the record was going to be called when we were working on it, but kind of made sense as a kind of centerpiece of the record, I think.
Yeah. I just remember Andrew suggesting it and everyone thinking like, yeah, that makes sense.
Because well, very shortly then, can you kind of explain what you mean by wide awake? Is it awake of kind of what's going on around you, what's going on in the world?
Yeah, it's kind of that, euphoric feeling you get when you, suddenly understand it all, or at least you think you do.
Fair enough. All right, guys, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, boys.